So last time you called, you were just getting the bare basics. Uh,
Yes.
Basics are actually part of Ānāpānasati, and when you fill out the list, it's so long that these basic points tend to get lost in the long list. So it's good to touch the highlights. Um, the sutta that we're about to talk about is Sutta number 118 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and how it relates to the Satipatthana Sutta, which is in number 10 in the Majjhima Nikaya and called the Maha Satipatthana Sutta in the Dingha Nikaya. I think it's number 22. So this Ānāpānasati is the main actual practice for um, the actual fulfillment of the more philosophical aspects of the teaching of the Buddha, which is basically, let's find a way to stop being dissatisfied and start finding a way to be satisfied. And so Ānāpānasati is the actual practice or method that we're going to do to get to that final goal that the Buddha has as dukkha nirodha. And also we look at it in the sense of the third noble truth, which is, what is it like to be actually in a particular moment or in a particular place or in a particular state of mind that is actually satisfying and free from suffering? If we can find such a place, then we can continue to visit that place. We could fix the place up and we could make it into a really nice life. And so this is
Oh,
basically the way that we would practice, okay? Uh, so it's not a journey to a destination the way that a lot of people think, but it's rather that we find the destination immediately and then we keep revisiting there over and over and over again. We keep coming back. And that the place that we want to start looking at then is this quality of the state of satisfying or satisfactory. And that as we get skills in satisfaction going, that also develops one's attitude to the point of can do. We can do this. And so then the first step of the noble path is stated um, that when the mind is obstructed, the student can see the mind is obstructed. No matter how obstructed the mind is, the student can clean out the mind and come back to this present moment and see the truth of things. Well, coming back to the present moment and seeing the truth of things then is satisfying. But the attitude is, I can do this. In the beginning, very few people have the attitude of can do. Um, an example of that is someone who has been playing the saxophone will automatically have the thought, I can play the flute, or I can play the the alto sax, or the tenor sax, or the bass sax, or I can even uh, play the clarinet. Now, the clarinet has a different register range than the saxophone, so there's a little bit more to learn. So the clarinet player could also do that. But also, here's the point: is that the violin comes by, and neither the saxophone player nor the clarinet player have the attitude, "I can do that." Too. That is only with time with the violin that either one of those musicians, the sax player or the clarinet player, can come to that violin with, I can do this one too. And the reason for that is because the clarinet and the saxophone or the flute are very close together. You manipulate a reed with your mouth and you play a whole lot of fingers, and each finger is designed to either go up or down, depending upon where it's sitting on the keypad or the pad where it's at. To where a violin, your left hand is all over the place. It's a completely different instrument to play. And so this is also the way that we have to understand the practice of the Dhamma, is that this is something new. This state of satisfaction that we're practicing with is brand new. No one has ever taught you this before. Even if they've taught meditation, they don't come from this point of working with this I can do it attitude. And yet the Buddha was quite big on this. It's such an important point that he says that it's the first step of the path, and the first step of the path of Sotapan, which is the stream entry. So this is basically putting your toe in the water. If you're going to enter the stream, the first thing you do is you put a foot in the water. Okay, that putting of the foot in the water is, I can do this. I can take this stream on. That if you fear that you will drown, you won't even put the first foot in it. And so this attitude is something that will be developed, and it will be developed as you practice and gain success. And so this way we work with the Ānāpānasati, and in the beginning it looks interesting, in the middle it looks awesome, and the end it looks like a piece of cake. And so what I mean in the middle is awesome is when we begin to see the extent of it. Because Ānāpānasati, they say, or the Buddha says, is done for the fulfillment of the four foundations of mindfulness. Okay, now what we mean basically like that is Ānāpānasati is then going to incorporate mindfulness of the body, which basically means waking up the body. When I use the word mindfulness, I automatically have this going off in my head, because that's the word that's commonly used, but it's not really what we mean. That the word sati is much more of a quality of waking up. And it also has the quality of remembering. So you can say that sati is to remember, to wake up. And in that regard, we're waking up the body, we're waking up the mind, we're waking up to what the contents of the mind are. And if we get good and experienced at it, then we can wake up to the feelings, so that we begin to manage the way that we feel. That normally humans are driven by their feelings. Yes. They act angry because they feel angry, and they don't have any control over how they feel until they wake up to these feelings and recognize that, oh, you can be the boss here. You don't have to let the feelings control the situation. So along with this can-do attitude comes also the eradication of doubt. That shraddha is often translated as the word faith. But people can have an awful lot of faith in the wrong thing. They can have an awful lot of faith in things that do not even exist. So this is not actually faith in that regard. One student I've heard say, well, you have to start with faith because you have to start to practice knowing that nothing exists. In other words, you have absolutely no confidence that you can do this, that everything is full of doubt.
Yeah.
So I will give him that point. Yes, there may be a little faith, but we don't want to operate on faith at all. We want to take just one little step, and now we've got it from knowledge. I can take that step.
Yeah.
And so I can get close enough, then by taking steps, I can get close enough to the stream, and then I can put a foot in the stream. And so that one footstep into the stream starts with this point of the building of confidence that's based upon success. And therefore, I can do it. And this is at the foundation of the Eightfold Noble Path. But a lot of people, they see each of these four stages separately, and in the sense that they're a list of things. Oh, the Buddha taught the Eightfold Noble Path. What's the Eightfold Noble Path? Well, there's this item and that item over there and this item here and that one too. And then you do this, that, and the other thing. And then you've got the path. Okay, so this is the way that they look at it, rather than recognize, no, this is actually a package deal, and that the right view is needed to get started, so that we know that it's that basically, if the knowledge is of suffering and the end of suffering, then the first step that every student makes is knowledge of suffering. In other words, you'd have never called me if you didn't recognize that you needed something. So there is some knowledge of dukkha there. And so then the second knowledge is the knowledge that I can, from time to time, come out of my suffering. And I can come out of it when I remember to come out of it. And if I remember to come out of it and take the right effort to come out of it, then I can come out of it. That suffering that I'm in is only there when I don't recognize what's going on.
Yeah.
And so this is the whole point then about the waking up. So now that we're recognizing that Ānāpānasati is for the fulfillment of waking up the body, waking up the feelings, waking up the mind, and waking up the way that we think, and seeing the kinds of thoughts that we have, etc. What are the objects of the mind? This is the Satipatthana. But now we practice the Satipatthana for actually the fulfillment of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. And in the way that the Ānāpānasati talks about it is the fulfillment of the path. And the fulfillment of the path is actually the Sambhojana, or the 7 factors of enlightenment. But the 7 factors of enlightenment are nothing but the fulfillment of these items on the list of the Eightfold Noble Path. So when our sati becomes accomplished, then it becomes an enlightenment factor. That when our effort becomes accomplished, then it becomes an enlightenment factor.
And what do you mean by accomplished?
I'm about to get into that.
Oh, okay.
I just got to cover all 4 of them first. Because when right attitude becomes accomplished, then it's a factor of enlightenment, or a factor of the waking up. And so in that regard, the more accomplished we are, then the closer we are to the goal. Or let us say that the more often we're in the goal, then the more we have confidence that I can return to the goal and then keep coming back to the goal over and over again. So it's not like we eventually reach a goal over a long trek or a journey. It's that we keep continuing to return to the goal over and over and over again. It's always in the here now situation. And so in that regard, what we mean by the accomplishment of the 7 factors of enlightenment, the accomplishment then is the ability to continue to return over and over and over again. And then the suttas, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this Pali word into unremitting, like the Energizer Bunny. Just keeps on trucking, just keeps doing it. That's what the practice is. That is actually like an endurance, but it's not endurance because it's the goal. It's there is no going, that the endurance is in the going, but the going gets really easy. And so all we have to do is just keep coming back, just keep coming back, just keep coming back. And so we then practice the 7 factors of enlightenment to the point that they become factors of enlightenment, and that is done for knowledge and vision and deliverance. So that's what the sutta says. Right at the end of the sutta, it's knowledge and deliverance. Now, what we mean by this word deliverance can also be used as the word freedom or liberation, or moksha is the Pali word, and it means basically now freedom from suffering. That it's so easy now for us to get ourselves out of suffering, and it is so easy to see the suffering that we spend very little time in it. Almost none, in fact, because we can see it coming. But we have to practice seeing it coming, which means we have to practice to remember to see it coming, and then practice the right effort of getting out of the way. And then the practice of congratulating ourselves, I can do this. Yeehaw, I'm the winner here. This moment, no suffering. And so these are the aspects of the path. And so when we call them enlightenment factors, it would become unremitting sati. Unremitting sati, which means it keeps coming back, And this is, in fact, because it's the first item on the list of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And also because the 7 factors of enlightenment are set up in the way of cause and effect. So, and the operative is unremitting. So if unremitting mindfulness arises, which means we keep remembering, and we keep remembering, then that will give rise to unremitting investigation. To keep looking, to keep watching, to keep noticing. Well, that is, in fact, the key ingredient for right noble view. Right noble view doesn't come to a conclusion, it just keeps investigating. That the joy comes from the investigation, even though we're able to connect a whole lot of dots, there's still a whole lot of dots have never been connected together. There are dots that need to be connected together that humans haven't ever connected together yet. Mm-hmm. Some of them were called astrophysicists. Others are called old, fat, happy men. Still, there is ignorance there. We're not going to ever get it all done. But we can get it to the point to where it keeps coming back, unremitting, over and over and over again. Unremitting sati, unremitting remembrance, brings on then unremitting investigation. Unremitting investigation, and doing this over and over again, brings on a new kind of skill or a new habit that we used to call right effort. But now that effort is so right that it's easy. It's almost energetic.
Yeah.
In other words, as soon as sati arises, we automatically take a deep breath. We're in the habit of doing that. We don't have to convince ourselves or talk ourselves into taking a deep breath. We automatically gladden the mind. We don't have to think of it like that. And in fact, instead of the point of in the beginning, you would say, I caught you. There you are again. I see you. Turns in eventually to, oh, well, I'm glad I stopped doing that. Well, I'm glad I stopped thinking those thoughts. Out they go. Oh, what a relief it is to not have to think about something that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's gone, it's dead, and yet the mind will bring that stuff back up, try to solve the problems again that existed 10 years ago. And so, we, with unremitting sati, we begin to recognize those thoughts in the mind and understand that I'm better off without them. I begin to make choices about it to the point that I'm deciding that I'm going to have only wholesome thoughts and not allow unwholesome thoughts. Now, we'll talk about this later at an important point. But as we investigate, we start classifying. Are these the kind of thoughts that actually keep me in trouble because there's the old way that I did it? Or are the thoughts that I'm having now useful, beneficial, and wholesome and worth continuing to do? And so one of the ways of making that distinction is, am I thinking thoughts about what's happening right now, or am I thinking about the future, or am I thinking about the past? And we keep remembering to ask ourselves that question, and that's sati, to keep remembering to ask that question. And then asking that question is right investigation. And so we begin to investigate the thoughts that we have. We begin also with that it becomes easy to do because we've developed the habit of doing it. It no longer takes any effort at all. In the beginning, it takes effort. But later, when that part of it becomes very easy, that's when we'll begin through our investigation to discover things that we didn't discover before. And now we have to exert proper right effort to deal with those things. So it's a matter of layers of coming down. As our investigation skills improve, the more deep crap we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then that fourth item, which is in the Sutta of Ānāpānasati, it's using the word piti. That's the fourth item on the list. But this item of piti directly correlates on the Eightfold Noble Path with right attitude. Right attitude is that which has the can-do attitude. And that can-do attitude becomes almost exhilarating. Gives you great confidence, and that great confidence or that great shraddha will also be useful in developing fearlessness. And so this is how then the 7 factors of enlightenment work together, because once we become completely fearless, once we become completely satisfied at this state of the fourth unremitting item, that's when we finally can relax. Only the strong man can relax. The weak man has to be on guard because another strong man may come by and hurt you. But if you're really the strong dude in town, you can relax. Everything is easy for you. And so this is how the 7 factors of enlightenment then work towards this final goal of knowledge and then deliverance. And the Buddha makes a distinction between this knowledge and deliverance. And we can see that built right into the word enlightenment. It just kind of fits in that way. The word light has 2 different qualities to it. Light means that you can turn on the light. You can see what's going on. That's the knowledge. Knowledge of who I am, knowledge of what is my relationship to the world, and knowledge of what is my path and what is not my path, to the point of it being beyond doubt. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know exactly how to live. Because I practiced it, it's worked. I keep practicing it, it keeps working. And so I can see I've got the evidence right here over and over and over again that the evidence fits. And so we begin to have this complete, deep knowledge that gets to the point of being free from any doubt at all. And that leaves us then with that knowledge about how to live also means that we now have the knowledge of what to do with what the crap that's left. And so when we begin to understand and know what to do with the crap that we have left, that's then the deliverance, is the deliverance from the crap. An example of that would be someone who is on a beach with a huge bag, and their job is, in the moment, is to go collect seashells. And they collect one more seashell and one more seashell. Every little seashell that shines, she'll put it in her bag. But as she's walking down the beach for a long, long way, she begins to recognize that her bag is so full that even the really good ones that she finds, there's no room for them anymore. So now she has to take out the little shells and the ones that are broken and the ones that are not quite so good, so that she can have room for the bigger, more beautiful shells. This is a way of letting go, as we can recognize our defilements as, oh, I don't need to do this right now. I don't need this shell. This one is something that's of no value, and yet I picked it up along the way out of ignorance. When I didn't have many shells, this one was beautiful. Now that I've got all the shells I want, this one I can easily lose and not miss. What are some of those shells we're talking about? Anger, jealousy, rage, fear, sadness, those kind of shells. We picked all those up along the way, and when we recognize that we don't have room for them in our life anymore, we can set them down. So this is the real deliverance. But the deliverance can't happen until we have the knowledge of being fairly good shell collectors. And so with that knowledge, will deliver us from the heavy load of unimportant shells that we carry around, so that we can carry only the things that are valuable, wholesome, and worth carrying around, like a huge conch shell. Now that's something to carry around. You cut the tip off of it and turn it into a blowhorn or a trumpet. You can put it to your ear and hear the roar. But a sand dollar is not much work. Okay, so now that we've gotten that quality of the overall view of the Ānāpānasati Sutta, broken into 4 parts, which is the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we recognize, okay, if we're going to practice this 4 foundations of mindfulness, using Ānāpānasati as the vehicle to get them, then we understand why now there are 4 tetrads or 4 groups within Ānāpānasati. You have a group of 4 for the body, a group of 4 for the feelings, a group of 4 for the mind, and a group of 4 for the mind's objects. Now, in the beginning, we're going to collect some of those items out of that list of 16. The first item that we're going to pick out of that list is number 9, sati. Now, in the Ānāpānasati Sutta is actually listed as experiencing the mind. All right. In the beginning, just experiencing the mind, has it wandered away from the breath, or is it still watching the breath? Has the mind wandered into dissatisfaction, or is it in a state of satisfaction? This is the first thing that we begin to notice, what state or quality the mind is in. But later, as we investigate the mind, we begin to see things like, is the mind drowsy? Is the mind exalted? Is it bright? Is it exemplary? Is it ordinary? These are the qualities of mind. What state of mind do we have? Now, we also know that breathing has a quality of affecting the mind, that when people are not breathing well, they get drowsy. But when we're breathing very well, that means that we're not drowsy. And if we can understand that, then we can recognize, oh, when I see drowsiness, I know what to do about it. To take more deeper breaths. And so this is how we begin to work with that step 9 of experiencing the mind. Begin to watch it. By watching it, not only are we going to watch the conditions or the state that the mind is in, we're going to begin watching the thoughts and the things that wander in and out of the mind, the things that are really temporary. Thoughts are like clouds. Sometimes visual images are like rockets or spaceships. They just go, and then they're gone. And then we talk about it. And so it's good to begin to watch how visual thoughts arise in the mind. So this is something that we begin to look for during our investigation. So everything is based upon remembering to investigate, to remember to look at what's going on. The more you see what's going on, basically, if you don't practice correctly, the more you see that's going on, the more you'll hate it.
Yeah, like a lot of aversion.
One of the things that I say quite often to the students is a quote from Jesus: "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." But JC left off the third line. Actually, there's 4 lines. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, but first it will piss you off.
Yeah.
Therefore, the truth in general will piss people off. That's the 4th line. Be careful about spreading the truth, because you're only going to piss people off. You don't want to tell them the truth. That's why the whole human race is a pack of liars. We lie to ourselves on every occasion. Why? Because truth is painful. Why is truth painful? Because it robs us of our delusion, and it proves us that our magic was stupid.
Yeah.
And we don't like to see that our magical thinking is stupid.
Like,
So,
no excuse for suffering.
exactly so. Ye shall know the truth, and it will make you suffer until you recognize this is why that quality is there that so many meditation teachers miss teaching the students. They don't understand the full nature of Ānāpānasati, is this quality of gladdening the mind. We already in advance know that all we're ever going to do for a while is look at junk. The junk in that case is the bag of shells on the beach. That a lot of the shells that we picked up because we thought they were beautiful now are disgusting. That I've been carrying this thing for years, and it's done me no good at all. And so we're going to find a lot of disgusting things in there. Having a bright, shiny mind will be an enormous value in that self-discovery process. Why? Because it's only through the discovery process and seeing what's there do we hope to have a chance of being free from it. And yet when people see it, they don't want to know it. We go into states of denial. Sick people don't want to know they're sick. Dying people don't want to know they're dying. So they go into a state of denial. Well, another one is we don't want to be wrong. We think of ourselves as being able to think correctly. And so when we get even anywhere close in the vicinity of being proved wrong, we don't want to know it. Well, investigation and meditation, if you want to use that word, is all about going on a scavenger hunt. Knowing that the things that we're scavenging is the crap. And it's not going to be pretty to look at. So this quality of gladdening the mind is so valuable, it's so important. And in fact, it is the juice that gets the engine going, and the engine is named, I can do this. Without having joy, without having to be able to gladden the mind, without having the ability to, aha, I caught that. Without being able to do that, the going gets really tough. People will use words like it's hard. Meditation is hard. No, it's not. You're just giving yourself a hard time. Why are you giving yourself a hard time? Because you've been in the habit of giving yourself a hard time. Stop giving yourself a hard time over all the crap that you've been doing. Literally, stop giving yourself a hard time over all the crap you find, because you're going to find a whole lot of it. Instead, be very happy that you can find that stuff. Only by being able to see it, then can you remove it, get it out of the mind. In this case, in that moment. That same silver dollar, you might think it's the same silver dollar. There's just a lot of silver dollars in there. But every time that silver dollar comes up, you say, oh, I've seen you before. I know that kind of thought. And so out it goes. And we could do this. So it all has to do then with the building up then of the attitude of I could do this. The building up of the eradication of doubt. That doubt is a major, major hindrance. Is a hindrance in several ways, but it can be a momentary hindrance, but it can also be the hindrance that stops people from practicing at all, or it can be the hindrance that keeps them from ever starting to practice meditation. So it's got a lot of heavy-duty qualities to it. And so gladdening the mind and taking on the attitude that I can do this only comes with success, because it's the knowledge of success that then really eradicates the doubt. Just telling yourself, I can do this, without seeing that you can do it, is not going to eradicate that doubt. You got to really practice and know that you can do it. So this is the time for the right effort, to take on the amount of effort that you need to be able to gladden the mind, get it into a state of satisfaction, and so you can say, yep, I can do this. Yep, I can get myself. Yeah, I do not have to think about where I used to live. I can stop thinking about that house and stop thinking about the people that I knew and stop thinking about the state that it was in, and just stop with this past stuff. And when we can do that and see it over and over again, we can say, I can stop those thoughts about that house I used to live in. And now we have that confidence building. So we begin to eradicate the doubt. That gives us a very good feeling, which means that now we're beginning to manipulate feelings itself. In the beginning, working with the breath, knowing the body, watching the body breathe, making sure that we're taking in deep breaths and waking up the body is the beginning of it. Learning to see our thoughts and what kind of qualities of thoughts are worthwhile having is then the second kind of thing that we do. And then the third thing is these feelings. We begin to recognize, hey, I can feel the way I want to feel. I can feel successful. I do not have to feel angry or hurt. We actually begin to experience through our practice that you can change the way you feel. Eventually out in the world, and when I say eventually, this may be a few months or so, that you see yourself angry, but you see it really early and you haven't said anything yet. So the first thing you do is you shut your mouth, you think about it, wait a minute, I don't have to be angry, I can find a different approach. If I act angry to this person, I'll get angry back. So let me try friendliness, let me try a smile, let me try teasing, let me try a few jokes and see if that works better. Okay, so this is the way that we begin to practice, is we got to catch the way that we feel and then change it. Because you can change the way that you feel, but you've never practiced that before. And by not practicing it, we recognize, oh, that means that the feelings are the feelings. They feel the way they feel, and I don't have any control over it all. If I'm angry, I'm angry. If I'm hurt, I'm hurt. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm jealous, I'm jealous. No, you're not. You're not any of those things. I am not the body. I'm not the feelings. I'm not this mind. That who me is just a process that's going on, and we'll talk a whole lot about that soon enough. But right now in the beginning, we recognize that, oh, I am not a slave to the way that I feel. That I'm the emperor of everybody, in fact, this is really beautiful. Everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt. But the question is, are you going to be covered in dirt? Are you going to try to claw your way out of the dirt? Are you going to sit happily on top of the dirt? So this is what we mean then, is by practicing the attitude. The attitude is, I'm on top of this. I can do this. I'm successful. That begins now to work with the group of the tetrad that is called Vedana. Vedana is to see feelings well enough and to recognize you can begin to change the way that you feel. But this is going to take some effort too. just like changing what the thoughts were in the mind into giving yourself gladdening of the mind tools. It takes a little effort to take a deep breath. It also takes some effort to change the way that we feel, but it's right effort, and it's going to give you that feeling of, I can do this. I'm in charge of the feelings, just like I'm in charge of the thoughts. I can become in charge of the feelings also. And so this is how Ānāpānasati, practiced as a group, then operates through the four foundations of mindfulness. You can even begin to manage the way that you feel. You can begin to manage your mental states. You can begin to manage the contents of the mind, because it's your choice. Through right view, you have the right view. You know what the right thoughts are to have. So now you won't let dirty thoughts or junk thoughts or inappropriate thoughts or thoughts of the past come in and take over. All you have to do is remember. That's the trick. That's why sati is the lead. It leads the band. And in Sutta number 117 in the Great 40, the Buddha talks about how right view, right effort, and right sati run and circle around each other. That's how we get started. And by having those three things run and circle around each other, we add then the fourth, so that the fourth one comes into play. And what is the fourth one? The right attitude. So we start with right view, we get sati going, we take the effort then to change the mind, and the effort then to change the mind becomes the effort to change the feelings also. So we begin to change our attitude.
Yeah,
and so this is, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say it's interesting because in my experience so far, it's it seems like it's never a step-by-step process. It's all happening in the process, if that makes sense. So it's like mindfulness, then catching yourself, deep breathing, changing the feeling, like that all happens when you pay attention. So it's kind of interesting how, because I keep hearing like when monks, right, talk about paths and things like that in Buddhism, uh, they kind of talk about it not in the sense of like you're going to take a journey, but something that's happening within your experience. So if that makes any sense, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So this practice in Ānāpānasati, though it looks like that it's quite challenging or foreboding because it's got 16 steps, we can recognize, oh, no, there is a little process for the body, there's a little process for the feelings, there's a little process for the mind, and there's a little process for the mind states, or the Dhammanupassana. So it goes Kayanupassana, Vedananupasana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana. Now, when we use the word chitta in this case, it's not just the thinking part of the mind, but it's also associated with the feelings too. But that normally within the context of the Satipatthana, we generally think about it as the way that the mind thinks. Or basically, we begin to look at the investigating the mind to recognize what state it's in. Then the next one is to gladden the mind. And then the next part is to focus the mind, or to be able to keep the mind on track. Now, that word that most people in the West talk about is the word concentration, but they generally mean something completely different. Generally, when we think of concentration, like the kid's got to concentrate on his homework, is also the same kind of thing as concentrated orange juice. Concentration means to take out the things that are not essential and leave only the important things that are there. But that's not a good definition of the word samadhi. Samadhi means to gather together the needed factors, almost completely opposite of concentration.
Well, that is a big, difference.
Okay. And so when we practice samadhi for jhana, what that means is we're gathering together the factors of jhana. The way we do that is with Ānāpānasati. In fact, all of the practice of the first jhana is embedded right on the surface. You don't even have to dig into it to see the first jhana right there in Ānāpānasati. An example of that is step 5 and step 6 are two of the jhana factors of the first jhana. Step 9 then is going to be another factor of jhana. So that first jhana, in order to get the way of first jhana, is by properly practicing Ānāpānasati. In fact, that's the entire point or the entire goal of practicing Ānāpānasati, is to take the student into a place where the mind is fit for work. And what I mean by fit for work means fit to determine through investigation what thoughts are worth having, to be able to see how we feel and to change how we feel. So we begin to monitor and manipulate the kind of thoughts we have and the kind of feelings that we have. And that's actually what the practice of Ānāpānasati is really all about. And the goal then is to get oneself into the state of first jhana, which is, again, a state of great sukha. The Pali word is sukha. The word sukha is the exact opposite of the word dukkha. That's not only true in the Pali, it's also true in the Thai language, which is a surprise. That in fact the word sukha or suk is quite common in Thai language. Kwam suk tikum dum dai is an example of it. That was a beer commercial. Happiness you can drink. All right, so this state of sukha, state number 6 of Ānāpānasati, is also associated with satisfaction. That if we do have pleasure, if we do have happiness in this moment, then we don't have suffering in this moment. So the whole point of the teaching of the Buddha, dukkha, dukkha nirodha, this is it. Practice Ānāpānasati to practice getting in the state of being satisfied. That's the goal, and you can get into that anytime you think about it. And so part of then the goal would be that you know that every time you think about it, you can put yourself into a state of sukha. You do not have to put up with the dukkha that you create. You can change it to sukha instead. And we do that with right attitude. So these things run and circle around each other and become skills that are developed so that we can return to a state of happiness or joy, the state of first jhana, anytime we want to. But then the question is, how long is it going to remain? That will be a topic for our next talk. But right now we're talking about how do you get into it? How do you get into it? Some people would go so far as to say that you talk yourself into it, and I would not be against saying it that way. How do you talk yourself into it? Well, first off, we have to remember to talk yourself into it. Talking yourself into it is also the same thing as gladdening the mind, having thoughts of talking yourself into it. And when you're into it, now you can say, I'm in it. I can do this. And so you could also go so far as to say Ānāpānasati is nothing but talking yourself into a state of joy. And I say, okay, do it often. Remember to do it.
Yeah, until it becomes intuitive.
Until it becomes a habit. Exactly. Until you get used to it. So that the effort that it takes is now energetic. It's easy to do. But in the beginning, it's work. But the work is a joyful work. So, do you have any questions about what we've talked about today?
I do have. Let me see, because it's interesting. Because everything you said was like, it's like every time you talk, it's like things make sense, and it's weird, but it's it's funny because when you said about samadhi, that it's the factors coming together, and not some type of effort to focus on an object per se. Um, it's interesting because then people think samadhi's like a state where you're gone for 30 hours, and it's like, but and I've been to Zen retreats, and they say that uh, your samadhi's only good when it walks off the cushion, like you when it comes off and you're walking around and everything like that. Um, and ever since I started practicing the gladdening of the mind, because really no one has ever explained that to me, um, uh, it's because I always started from a place of like, you have to be a good person in order to have a good experience. And it was always like, and then I started doing the thing you recommended. And it was interesting. Like, it did bring an investigation. Um, and it brought me to like, oh, I feel good. I want to investigate uh, more about sila, and it was interesting. And then I started thinking about right speech, and because of the awareness, I started to see how sila was not like a moral rules; it was a guidance to gladdening the mind and things like that, and how it brought
Okay.
happiness.
There
Yeah,
is a beginning, a middle, and an end. Let me share that with you. Okay, as you
please.
just pointed out that the beginning you knew about. Now you're figuring out the middle. That now you see, oh no, instead of being a list of rules, it actually is a set of guidance.
Yeah.
But then there's a third. It's also good in the end. And this is how it's good in the end, in the sense that once the mind is unified, once you are satisfied, once your whole, let us say, worldview is a view from satisfaction, a view that everything is good, that you like the way that things are, then you're going to be extraordinarily unlikely to get in your car, go to town, and go shoplift at the local grocery store.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not going to happen. But now you're not doing it from either moral guidance or a rule. Now you're doing it because that's just the way you are. That's the way you feel. You're
Yes.
not about to go
Exactly.
out and hurt people. So now we're talking about this is how it's actually integrated or becomes part of the factors. And so in that way, we could say that when one has a noble mind, when one's mind is unified, when we get to the point of unification of mind, then we do not want to do things that are going to make the mind ununified, that we like that state. Well,
Yes.
robbing someone at the point of a gun, that's going to be a lot of disunity in there.
Yes.
Lying to someone creates
Mm-hmm.
disunity, it creates doubt. And in fact, doubt itself will create disunity. And so when the mind is unified, we want to remain that way. So one will naturally gravitate to refraining from harming others, refrain from killing, refrain from these actions, and also refrain from false speech. Sometimes, in fact, we get to the point of while we're composing an email, we want to make sure, sentence by sentence, there is no ill will, there is no gossip, there is no junk in there.
Mm-hmm.
But when the mind is completely free, now the way that we're writing it, we don't have to ask that question because it's already naturally going to be spot on.
Yes, and it I think like this first week, the way I would summarize it in like a simple sentence would be like, the sila hasn't become a burden; it's become an energy, like a way to keep on going instead
Right.
of
A guidance
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Right.
And it's
Okay.
interesting. I was like, really, woo, that's great. I was like, yes, that feels great. That was nice.
And so at
Yeah.
the end, it really does feel great because it's so natural.
Yes,
That's just
exactly.
naturally the way we are. We don't gossip because that's not, we're not comparing ourselves to other people.
Hmm. Yeah. And I do have one question, and I think
Okay.
it's really in daily life, for example, of course, you're going to encounter people who don't live in a certain way you live, and that's normal. Uh, and what do you do in that? Because I have to encounter people, and I can't just be like silent. You know what I mean? Like I can't just be quiet and ignore
Why?
people.
Why not?
Because what if it's
Well,
a I
don't ignore them, but be quiet with a big smile.
I
Pay
see.
attention to people, but you don't have to respond to them, or you don't have to respond to them in the way that you have been responding.
Okay, I see. Interesting, because sometimes I don't fall into a group, but sometimes they may think I'm kind of like throwing them off, like ignore. Oh, you're just being weird or stupid or something like that. And I'm like, no, I just I don't want to get into that type of discussion. Um, so, and they feel like I'm being better. They feel like I'm being negative towards them because of that.
Okay,
Um,
well, start with being positive towards them, and instead of
exactly.
telling
Yes.
him that you don't want to talk about that,
Oh
you
no, I
can
don't.
you can
Yeah.
make a contrasting example. So, for
Hmm.
instance, if he wants to talk about Republicans, you can say, "Yeah, but ain't it awful about the Democrats?"
Yeah. 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 Okay, I see. Yeah,
Okay, the
because
playing games of "ain't it awful" is common.
yeah, because I've
But you
never
can
had.
do it with a joke and with a humor. You don't have to buy into it. You don't have to feel the way that he feels.
Yeah, you see, that's like I've never
And
had
he's
that.
inviting you to feel the way he feels. He wants you to feel the way he feels, and you don't want to feel the way he feels. So are you strong enough to resist feeling the way he wants you to feel?
Hmm. Okay, I
And so
see.
you can take delight in that. Aha! I don't have to fall into that one.
Okay, yes, yes, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
had guidance on that, so it's a good. And I've never, I don't know. I don't like to
You
make
just
people.
gave
Yeah.
another example of when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Okay. When the mind wanders into this situation with this guy that wants you to feel a certain way and you don't want to feel that way, then you can not feel that way and then be very glad about it. Aha, I can gladden the mind. I don't have to feel the way he wants me to feel
Perfect. Okay. Yes. Okay.
because you
Yeah.
don't. And yet, and we will actually talk about this quite a bit when we start talking about metta and the Brahma Viharas, especially mudita. But I'll give you a little bit, and that is that the human being is a society being, which means that we collect into herds, that we look for our own champions and heroes, and most of all, we go along to get along, and that also includes feeling the way that other people feel, which is quite natural. If someone is angry about the bank, then when he tells the other people, he's not going to tell it, he's going to show his anger. With that, he's also going to expect everybody in the room to get angry with the bank. And if they don't, now there's a problem. They're not getting angry at the bank because that he won't. And you see that if he can get the other people angry at the bank, then that justifies him being angry at the bank. And so we go around wanting other people to feel the way that we feel, or we want people to do the things that we're doing to give us justification for what we're doing. An example is when a stranger walks into a bar and someone invites him to drink. If he doesn't drink, automatically he is now fully on an outsider. What the hell are you doing in the bar? Okay, because if you're in the bar and not drinking, then that proves that everybody in the bar who is drinking must be doing something wrong.
Hmm.
Okay. And so that's why humans have that built in tendency to go along to get along.
Yeah, because of the discomfort of, yeah.
Okay. So if you're now strong enough to say, wait a minute, I don't have to do that. I can feel good even though someone is feeling bad. I don't have to jump in there and feel bad with them just because they want me to do that. The other possibility is that they want you to nurture them in their anger and sadness. So you can take on that role. With a great big smile, you can say, there now. It'll all be okay. Tease the hell out of them with it, and they might, in fact, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a really good advice because it's really, I've never heard a practice of trying to be mindful or, or use sati in a relationship, a friendship, a workship, whatever, a coworker or something like that.
Sitting on the cushion in and of and by itself is not of much value. Very few people that I talk to come to me with the intention of, after they get a bit of skill going, they're going to go move to Burma and spend 18 hours a day for the rest of their life sitting. Nobody wants to do
Yeah,
that. Everybody wants to be able to put this stuff into practice throughout their daily life.
yeah,
It's really not about the sitting practice. Sitting practice is practice.
yes,
But
yeah.
we have
It's
to go
just,
out in the world and perform.
yeah,
The question is, can you develop by practice enough sati so that you can get it when you need it most out there in the world?
yeah. And yeah, everything you're saying is like, it's showing me that um the Buddha didn't like really just, it's funny because it's gonna sound stupid, but it's like he didn't just teach sitting meditation. He taught meditation is like a broad thing, not just, sitting. But that's usually what you're explained a little, unfortunately. I mean, you know,
Well, that's a
but it
very
happens.
narrow attitude
Yes.
about
Yeah.
about it, but that's the general attitude that's shared in the West.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than no, sitting meditation is actually just a practice to get ready to become a marvelous human being throughout the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess
That's
that's
what
the
the
only.
quality of noble means. That's what we mean by noble eightfold path or the noble right view, is because when the mind is noble, you're really a high class human being.
Yeah. And
Just because there's a mud fight right in front of you doesn't mean that you've got to get your clothes muddy and join the fight. That you can stay out of the fight.
yeah, for sure. I'm
And so
definitely.
you're the only clean one in the crowd. Everybody else is muddy. So that's the way to operate that. If you can remember, I do not have to feel the way that this guy is feeling. I can feel the way that I want to feel. And then you can practice that for a moment while you're silent, giving him a big grin, giving him a smile, but you don't have to buy into it.
Of course. Of
You can
course.
find, in fact, he may quite quickly tell you what you can do for him that will make him feel better.
Hmm.
And so if you can kind of have the presence of mind to listen to what it is that he's wanting or needing, if you can offer that to him, that'll help him come out of his state. If he
Okay.
wants nourishment or if he wants to justify his position, then tell him, yeah, you're right. Looks like you're really upset about it, but you're right.
Yeah. That's a practice in and of itself.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there and we'll catch you next time.
Perfect. You said twice a week, right?
Twice a week's good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah,
So,
I believe
so add some
once.
of the tidbits we talked today into the practice you've already started, and
Yes.
you'll get good benefit from it.
Yes, I hope. Is there a specific day or is any day fine?
Every day's a holiday.
Perfect. 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 Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it very much, and I'll see you next time.
Okay. I've only done, by the way, I've only done one retreat since 2011.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm still on it.
All right, I'll join you. I'll join you.
Up in Bodhidharma territory, 9 years. We see you, Dennis. Bye-bye.